Hit record. And well, thank you all for joining today. My name's Tom Dufour. I'm the CEO with Big Sky Franchise Team. And we've done several sessions of this franchise sales trends today as we've been going through this. And as we've been going through the Navigating the Coronavirus Economy series. And this is going to become a regular session we're going to be doing monthly going forward, as we tend to get some good attendance here. And it's also just good to get see what's happening with some different trends and data points that are going on in the franchise world. So this is a continuation of the Navigating the Coronavirus Economy, episode number 24, I believe. I can't believe we've been doing this for almost 6 months. It's incredible. And anyway, we will get moving and showing you here our first data point that I'm pretty, I think it's a pretty interesting tell for what's going on. So let me share my screen and we will be on our way. Okay. So this here is an overview of what is happening in the franchise sales trend world. Can everyone kind of see that? If you cannot, please let me know. What this is a Google Trends search, and this is a Google Trends. I typed in the phrase "how to franchise," and I did a. I think I just stopped my share screen here. Let me share this back. Here we go. All right, and so this is the previous 5 years of the search phrase on Google, how to not how to franchise. I want to type in buy a franchise. That is what we're looking for. And so if you take a look at this data, I think that this is really, really, really interesting. So as you take a look at these data points here, this is the previous 5 years. And 100, just to give you an overview, we're going to look at a lot of data points. I'll do quickly to try to explain how these different sources use this. But a data point of 100 is the peak or the highest search volume during that time. And so I think that's really important to take note of. So we can see back here, the highest for the last 5 years was, this is the past 12 months. This is 12 months. Sorry, I did a 12-month. So the last 12 months was back in October of 2019. And if you look here where we are today, this week, right now, we're at 85%. And if we look at this trend here, here's where you take a look. Let's go back to, where are we? Here's February, here's January. You kind of see this bouncing. Here's where the pandemic started coming in, February into March, and you see it kind of tank, and then it pops back up, kind of dips down. But look at where we're trending right now coming into the end of the year. I think that's interesting to show what's been going on over the course of the past 12 months. We see this trend continuing to grow. So some additional data came out here yesterday, I believe, that talked about what's happening in some specific franchise sectors for lead generation. And here's some data points that would really seem shocking to me when I first saw this data. This was literally just released yesterday, I think is when it came out. And so this shows for the growth of franchise interest, the top growth categories in terms of a percentage growth month to month. So this is July to August of 2020 to show the growth. And financial services just exploded here. I mean, literally, it's off the chart compared to the others. You see health and fitness, 14.5%. That's still a huge increase. Personal care, 9.5%. Home services, 8.7%. Real estate, 6.5%. Automotive, showing these growth rates in these different categories here. Well, one of the things to take a look at in addition to this is taking a look at, so this was July to August. I want to show you June to July here. And I'm going to show you the 3 previous months, and I'll explain why here in a moment. When we take a look here, this is June to July growth rate. So you see the big bounce back in food and restaurant last month. Senior and healthcare, personal care still grew. Pet services and automotive had a big, big surge last month. And then this was from May to June. to show what's going on 3 months ago. So you see personal care boomed. That was very, very huge growth there. Financial services grew again, senior care, child care, food, cleaning and maintenance. You see the growth. You see these segments with just high growth right after the pandemic had kind of come in and hit. And for me, when I see some of these things, personal care tends to be an industry in franchising that gets a lot of marketing and target to that I've just seen over the last 17 years of doing this. Personal care, senior care, that kind of thing has seemed to be growing just as a regular trend. Financial services, the fact that this popped up here, what I think happened in this month of from May to June, I think that financial services companies saw this spike in an increase, and this is just my opinion in trying to tie some answers back to this data, but I think financial services for previous month, I think they increased their budget in this category. I think they increased their marketing spend. I think they ran some additional lead gen. I think franchise brokers probably spent some more money on it. They saw this happening. And so they said, hey, financial services, there's an interest. It's hot for whatever reason. This is back to May and June again. Let's add some additional fuel to the fire. I think that marketing started hitting in late July into August because it was trailing, and now we see that surge in this interest popping up. I'm speculating here, but that seems to indicate with some of this data, especially with financial services being so one-sided, whereas the May to June, you had several categories that were exploding. It didn't seem as unusual then. So just some additional data. And by the way, this data that I'm showing right now is from franchiseinsights.com. That's what we're walking through now. We've got some other great resources we'll be showing from a broad economic perspective as well. As we take a look here at the as we take a look here at the some of the different states and where is this search and research coming from here, and where are the inquiries coming from, and we can take a look at, and it says, you can see the headline, Georgia reclaims the top rank in the Q2 for franchise interest index, and the headline here, Southern states lead an above average pace of investment inquiries. And so here are the top states by investment or interest inquiries. So Georgia is number one, Nevada, Florida, Louisiana, Texas, Mississippi, South Carolina, Delaware, Alabama, and really for the most part on the top 10, most of these have tended to be in the top 10 for a while, but I will also associate some of this to the fact that most of the states here did not shut down their economies quite the same way that states like New York and California and some other states had really cramped down and shut down their economy. To be fair, though, to also couple with that, most of these states, Georgia, Nevada, Florida, Louisiana, Texas, these have consistently been in a top 10 ranking for many months, many years. So it's not unusual to see them up at the top for search index. Now let's take a look at just some overall franchise readiness. So just a survey to say, hey, what's the sentiment? This is a part of the Small Business Startup Sentiment Index. So this is saying, hey, there's some great data out here. Yeah, we see some numbers coming in, but how are people feeling? What's their overall impression of what's actually happening right now? These are things we want to know, right? I mean, inquiries might be coming in, but are they feeling compelled? They might be saying, I'm interested, but do they have the warm fuzzies about maybe getting something going to get the franchise started? And based off of the data here, the answer is yes. If we look at this here, this green bar, this green color here says they're planning to buy or start a business this month. And look at this trend going up from January. Look at January, 14%, 14.3, February 14, March 15, April 15, 16.7. Even look at this, March and April, it really didn't drop all that much. Now look at, here it comes. You would think the common thing out there is fear. Everybody, duck and cover kind of a thing. And look, it's on the contrary. You see this ready to buy, planning to buy or start a business this month. Look at this growing, 15, 16, almost 17 in June, 20%, 23.4% in the month of August. This is incredible. So that means people are seeing this. They're seeing this as an opportunity to grow. And then we look at the next 3 months, and you see that that trend has been pretty steady. It started to drop a little bit, but in July and August, but we see an uptick as to being ready now. And then 4 to 6 months from now, you can see that that bar really dropped actually in the month of August. So just to give you an idea here, this interest is happening. This is very, very real in terms of what's going on. You start looking at this data, it says, it starts to reassure you in the franchise space that, hey, candidates are out there. They're shopping, they're looking, and they're feeling positive about making a purchase to buy a franchise. And what I think is very telling, this data helps reinforce this. I've heard this story 2 times in the last 7 days, this exact story that we've been talking about here on our webinar series, which is when the economy contracts and we go into a recession and people get laid off, they start looking for a job. And eventually, not all of those jobs are where they used to be. They can't find that job. They look for a few months, they can't find a job. And now they start thinking, oh boy, maybe now is the time I need to start my own business. And then the people that start going down that pathway start thinking, maybe I should buy a franchise instead of starting my own thing. I don't want to figure it out. So it leads that pathway down to franchising. And literally within the last week, I've had 2 instances with that exact story. Both of them were corporate employees, about 45, 50 years old. They'd been in corporate their whole career for large companies. They looked for a job for several months, couldn't find it. And they said, I think I want to buy it or start a business or maybe buy a business. And then they thought about it and said, but I'm 45 years old. I'm 50 years old. I don't have time to wait around and figure out if I can make this go. And so that led them to franchising. And by the way, both of these candidates are in the franchise or purchasing a restaurant. So it's very, very interesting to hear what's going on there. So let's take a step out of franchising specifically and just take a look at retail traffic. This is something we've been following and monitoring. Now, retail traffic, retail impact on the economy is not as significant as it was 20 years ago or 30 or 40 years ago because of online revenue and internet sales, but it is still a good indicator for us to see, are people out and about and are they spending money at the grocery store, at local shops, at restaurants, whatever it might be? Are they, what's happening? And so this is by Locate AI, and they do, and I don't know how they get access to this data, but basically they're tracking where your cell phone's pinging, millions, hundreds of millions of data points. They have to aggregate this information. This is probably one of the most accurate reports you'd be able to find for total aggregate data here. But what I find really interesting is here's pre-pandemic levels, and this 0% here, they use this line as kind of the average number for growth and what we're looking at before the pandemic hit. So you can see this. So retail traffic as a whole for the US is still down about 15%. But you see this deep dive, and then it kind of bounces, it's pinging and bouncing and pinging and bouncing. And now it's kind of hovering, and here it comes, it's starting to rise up again. It's starting to rise up here as we're coming into the end of the third quarter into the fourth quarter. And I think for retailers, fourth quarter, Black Friday kind of a deal coming up here with fourth quarter starting. Every retailer knows fourth quarter is the moneymaker for the year. So for if you're in the retail business or you have customers or clients in the retail business, seeing this indicator trending up right now in August, in the first part of September, and trending that direction going into the fourth quarter, I think that's a really good indicator. We'll see if it bounces down or what happens, but I like seeing this trend, especially for the retailers. Consumers are getting more confidence again, and that as a whole is going to lead into other confidence for purchasing other items and other services and products there. Now, I want to go in on a micro level on a couple of standouts just to showcase, to give you an example here. So I want to show you Las Vegas. Look at Las Vegas's retail traffic trend. It is up almost 20%. It's up almost 20%. That just seems incredible to me, but it's up almost 20%. That's pretty incredible. And this retail trend that we're seeing in Las Vegas, especially considering it's a high entertainment district with lots of people close together, with this whole social distancing and things going on, you would think a city like Las Vegas would just be destroyed and devastated. And maybe some of the economic numbers indicate that financially, but look, this retail traffic, this is a really, really, really good sign. This is a very good sign, especially if you're in or around Las Vegas, just to showcase that. And then I want to show you Los Angeles. And I really think Los Angeles and what's going on here, just to highlight this, it's down 5.6%. For me, this is significant considering the fact that California had been on hardcore lockdown for many months, many months. And Southern California is such a huge market in terms of just population, just the whole area there. And so when you look at Los Angeles here and see this trend coming back up for retail traffic, I think these are just good indicators to showcase what's happening in the broad, in some of these micro markets, to show you, even though on U.S. traffic here is trending, it's popping back up, it's showing some nice trends, but here are some micro small metros to take a look at. Now I want to take a step back out of retail traffic. We're going to jump into manufacturing. Manufacturing impacts all of us, but what I really want to showcase here is this Institute for Supply Management. They do a it's a purchasing managers index that they've run for quite some time, and it is growing right now. It's up. You can see this dip here. If you can see this on the screen, I'll see if I can zoom in a little bit more to make this easier to see and scroll over here. Hopefully this is a little bit easier to see, but it's up 56% is what it's trending. 50%, if you're below 50%, it means that manufacturing is contracting, that it's not growing. Above the line means that it is. And so what I think is really interesting in this just short about 3-year window here, you can see this growth. You can see in manufacturing that it had kind of started that decline way back in 2018. We can see this decline 2019. And manufacturing is a great leading indicator for where we're going as an economy. When our manufacturing's strong, it tends to be a good indicator that things are going to improve for the economy in 6, 12, 18 months as a whole for many other sectors and industries. So when we see this trending down, this contraction that we're seeing now from the pandemic was probably inevitable, and the pandemic was just the trigger. I'm sure you've heard lots of data about this. But look at this bounce back here that we're seeing right now. Part of this has been caused from back orders and backlog, but not all of it. Only some of it has been. And the optimism for continued growth is still very, very high. And manufacturing, as many of you probably are aware, when manufacturing is producing, it has the greatest multiple or multiplier in terms of economic impact. And the reason being is that it employs people at the local manufacturing facility, and then those people impact their local community, but the manufacturer is also purchasing raw goods and raw materials from their suppliers and distributors, and then that's having a ripple effect, and then the good is getting distributed and shipped and made into something else, or it's a part for something else, and it has all of these touch points. So the multiple for manufacturing, which is why it's always talked about, is such a big deal, but it has the highest multiplier in terms of economic impact for a ripple effect in contributing to job growth, economic growth, and so on. So that's why it's always talked about. It's a really important thing. So I think this is a really good indicator to showcase what's happening here with the manufacturing segment. And then the other huge segment for us to take a look at as we're thinking about what's going on and what's contributing to some of this growth is the services industry. And so the services industry is a huge segment of the overall economy. And I'll zoom in a little more. I'll hit this a couple more points. But we can see service economy has bounced back pretty strongly here as well, about the exact same number as manufacturing, 56%. And it was up slightly higher in the July report. This is the August report that came out here just a few days ago. But you can see that it's still up and growing. And so this is a good indicator for the broad economy at large, which in my opinion is part of what is helping drive this increase. Look at this spike over the last few months. I mean, we're talking the second highest franchise interest. I'm back at the Google Trends here for the search term buy a franchise. We're at the second highest marker for that phrase since January. What is this? Since January, right now. That's happening literally this week right now. And you can see it tends to dip a little bit in during the summer months, July and August. It just naturally tends to, but you see what's going on with these searches, and it's a leading indicator to show us what's going on with these different franchise data points: retail, manufacturing, and services. All of these things play together. All of them play together. And so as you're thinking about your business, whether you're franchising, selling franchises, or going through this is going to impact your business in some way, shape, or form. I can tell you just the sentiment that I see from my client base and from our client base, which are those small, growth-minded, small to mid-sized businesses. We are hearing and seeing great enthusiasm and a positive outlook. Enthusiasm and a positive outlook is what we're hearing. And so when I take just kind of that sentiment, hey, what's kind of the word on the street? What are people really saying? Because sometimes what they're saying doesn't always reflect what those numbers do, And so those numbers are really being reinforced by what I'm seeing in the small business community as well. And when we look back, if I share my screen here, let me share this. And we just look back at that small business sentiment. Where was that? This one right here. And we look at this small business startup sentiment index. Planning to buy or start a business this month. I mean, it's up over 9 points over January. That's just amazing to me to see where that is. Given all of the things going on, given if you read the news or listen to it, a lot of it seems to be gloom and doom all the time. But this is a compelling, interesting story for all of us that are in the franchise world, thinking about franchising right now, or just growth in general. These are all good indicators and things that if you're talking to prospective franchisees, you can be talking about these things with them and share these data points. Look, this is not an opinion. These are facts. These are valuable resources. These are the retail, the manufacturing. These are all real things. So that is what I have to share today. I know that's a lot. I felt like I covered a whole lot of information, but want to open that up for maybe some questions, comments, thoughts, ideas, suggestions here. So feel free to unmute yourself if you're in a relatively quiet area, or just type into the chat box here.
Tom, are you open to any questions or just specifically about today's presentation?
No, well, I mean, generally related is fine.
Okay. This upcoming franchise expo, this virtual thing that happens in October, are you familiar with
Mhm.
that?
Yes.
You think that's going to be all that's cracked up to be? This is my first time to be involved with that organization and that particular expo, and now it's online and all that.
Yeah, so that's for the MFV Expo. Is
Yeah.
that's the
Yes.
one in October?
Yes.
So we've participated as our own guinea pig in some of these shows to try to give feedback to our clients regarding that. So far, the MFV Expo is the only show that virtual show that we have seen that has produced candidates for us in a quality format. They've consistently produced. So I don't see any reason why they would not produce for this show as well. Some of the other shows, it's hard for us to gauge as well, only because we're a supplier. And I think as a supplier for some of the other virtual shows, I don't want to, look, we participate in all these shows. I don't want to diminish the value that they add, but I just have not seen the same performance that I've seen in the MFV Expo, in the online event specifically. And in fact, we had Anthony Lincata from the MFV Expo do a webinar for us here about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And be happy to get you that recording if you want to hear kind of their future plans and format for expos going forward into 2021 and beyond, getting back to normal and so on. I think you bring up a good point there, in just that I didn't draw the connection to with the retail traffic. If people are out and about, we're seeing retail traffic increase. It seems like there's maybe a greater comfort level of being out in out in the general public, which may be a good indicator for future trade shows in general, that attendance may be down. That 15% reduction may be a good indicator to say, hey, maybe we plan on a 15% ish type of a reduction in trade show attendance when they go back to in person. But no, I think that the MFE online expo, and I'm not endorsing them. I don't get paid by them, but if you were to do one for a franchise online expo, that's one I would recommend doing. We're participating in it as well. So to give it a go. Trade shows are an important part of our business, so we're trying this one out as well. Great question. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
At a recent online or virtual franchise show run by the Franchise Expo, just as a barometer of activity, I guess, McDonald's wrote 21 applications in one weekend for a virtual show in Canada, a regional show in Canada.
And Andrew, sorry, I recognize your voice. I can tell that's you. Just real quick, is
Thanks,
that?
Dad.
Thanks for tuning in, by the way. I guess I have a question. Was that through, which show was that through? Was that through the Franchise Expo group out of Toronto?
Yeah, they run shows across Canada. So I'm putting in a virtual booth at the one in Western Canada in September, and the one in Ontario in middle of October, as a franchise consultant. And that one, I believe, was the Ontario show that the McDonald's did activity. So it tells you that if you come in and you play the game the right way, do the right stuff, there is traction there. And what they've learned over the last few months, they've been doing this thing since the start of the pandemic, is they at first tried to do sort of a large mass type thing, like a traditional, on the floor activity. And they've learned to narrow it down to less, we'll call them exhibitors, I guess, or participants in the show. And they get lower volume, better quality, and they get better traction because it's more focused that way than rather having. So they're limiting their traction now to, in Western Canada and Ontario, to 80 participants max.
You mean for exhibitors? Only
Yes,
80,
correct.
80 exhibitors. Okay, interesting.
And extremely affordable. So, for example, I can do both shows with a prime real estate for my logo, profile about my brokerage business, and that cost me under $1,000. Both combined, right?
And Andrew, and just so that everyone who's listening and watching here, Andrew is a franchise broker. He's based in the Toronto area.
Correct. Yeah. So value for dollar spent compared to a traditional show, you can get in for a basic fee of $250. Then it goes from there, right, per show.
Okay. Well, that's interesting, and it's I'm happy to hear that the show is pulling well in Canada there. So I think that would be that's a good point for anyone who's in Canada or thinking about expanding into Canada. Jim, I know you're up in the Washington State, Seattle Metro. It's right across the border there. Knowing that these expos are kind of pulling in Canada, that's interesting. I'm happy to hear that. When I spoke with our contact there, he had told me in the U.S. for the Franchise Expo people, he had said that for national event, that's the name of the organization that organizes it. Last I had heard, he said they were stopping online expos in the United States. So they were no longer going to do it because they weren't getting the traction. Maybe what they're figuring out in Canada, maybe they'll end up translating that into the U.S. here in 2021.
Could be.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. Any other questions, ideas, thoughts, comments? Any feedback, any other data points you might know of or have heard of recently? Great. Well, I would like to, with no other questions here, just thank everyone for tuning in. Hopefully you gathered some good info today, and we will be uploading this as a replay, so you'll be available to watch it or listen to it or share it with anyone on your team or someone who you think may be able to benefit from that. So thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Have a great weekend. Take care.